This video is gonna be about like culture. It's gonna be like stealing culture or like culture appropriation. Europeans, they created a lot of movies like back in like the day. Like they were in charge of like movies and shows and like just anything that was either being trendy or like a pop culture, anything like broadcasting like on the television. Since they were in charge of like all like the programming and stuff, and they kind of use stolen culture. Like Europeans, like I'm talking about when it comes to music, Black Americans have created pretty much every music genre, like rock and roll and like all that stuff. And then Europeans actually really liked it a lot, that they kind of stole the culture and then they broadcasted that music to be their music. So through the years, we are now looked at as that's their genre when it belongs to an actual Black American person. And like all the music genres that were made in the Americas, or just like any native indigenous cultures. Like when you see like a native indigenous cultured movie, you always see a European playing a native indigenous person. Every time you see like you look up like or watch a native indigenous movie, see like movies about like native indigenous people, you always see like a European dressed up as a native indigenous person, like has like a bunch of like really dark makeup, is dressed up like kind of like culture appropriation. And then through the years, we really think that that's their culture, that whole aesthetic. We see a girl dress up like a native indigenous girl, or what is programmed to be an Indian girl, native indigenous girl that was on television or that was televised. It was played by a European girl. If it was like a native indigenous guy, it was played by a European American guy. And through the years, we really think that that's their aesthetic, that's their actual culture. And it gives false like a sense of like actual ethnic culture. Same with like music too. Black Americans pretty much created all these like genres of music. Europeans see it and they like it, and then they take it and then they normalize it to be theirs, like rock and roll, gospel, or blues, jazz music, or any of those. Those were created by a Black American. Nowadays, we see some music genres that they have created and they normalize it to be a very white imaged, like rock and roll. That was made by Chuck Berry. They normalized that to be a European like music. We normalize that to see that as a European imaged or European styled or European cultured music when it's not. That's all from stolen culture, including native indigenous culture, and also like music culture. They kind of like have a tendency to like steal that culture, and then they broadcast it on the television or radio to be a European American person either playing that role on the TV or playing that some sort of genre on the radio. And then through the years, we are normalized to think that that's their culture. That stolen culture is European culture. That's why Europeans use the television or like radio to normalize their stolen culture to be their personal image that they have created. That's why I really love like history. Like when it comes to like Black American culture is like the most inspirational, like in the Americas too. Like they have very strong like inspirational culture, or it doesn't even have to be inspirational. They created pretty much all the music genre. Music creates pop culture, but the music genres they have created, it has been normalized to be like a white person, like a European American person representing that certain genre that another person has created. European Americans, like in the past, or just European immigrants, like they use like television to like steal culture and then normalize it to be theirs. That's why whenever we see actual people who are rightfully in that culture to be representing for that culture that their ancestors have created, they're looked at as like weird a little bit. They're like, that's not your culture. When in reality, that actually is that certain person's culture if a European American is the image of that culture. Like every music genre and native indigenous culture too. Like I try to watch like native indigenous movies like in the past, like up until like present day. I can't even find like a solid like native indigenous cultured movie without there being like either a European person in there or just like some sort of European dressing up as a native indigenous person. I cannot find one movie. Because there's like Disney movies, but like those movies are like voiced by like English people, like English. And that's why I'm like, damn. There's no native indigenous movies because we were not in charge of the broadcasting or TV systems or anything, or just like what was being broadcasted in the Americas. That's how culture and pop culture is made, is by stolen culture, because they use that person to televise that stolen culture as their culture, and then through the years we really normalize that to be their culture. And whenever the original inhabitant person somewhat plays in that culture that their ancestors have created, they are looked at as like weird. They're like, that's not your culture, when it really is that person's culture. That the origins of that music genre or the origins of that culture belongs to that person, whoever made it. Then since Europeans had like the control over like the programming and TV and what was broadcasted, they stereotyped us. After stealing our cultures, they stereotyped us brown people and like black people and just many people across the world to be a certain way, a certain stereotype. And we actually follow those stereotypes that they have placed upon us, and those stereotypes are low vibrational. And that's why every time we tap into some good lifestyle or good stereotype, we're looked at as weird, because it's been televised to thinking that our culture is very negative culture. And that's how stolen culture is made, by European Americans in the past, or European immigrants in the past, who were in charge of the TV and broadcasting and what was being televised at the time. It was all stolen culture. Even like the women too, like their fashion and their aesthetic of their actual ethnicity culture got stolen by actual European American in like movies. But yeah, that's how stolen culture is. That's what stolen culture is. It's normalized to be a European imaged person to be that stolen culture. But yeah, that's why we should like understand the origins of like our actual like fashion and music, just like way of life, and like what was not being televised that was actually our culture kind of thing. But I mean, I actually really like decolonizing. Decolonizing also, like from the like watching all these television. Most of the time on like television is like stolen culture. Stolen cultures played a big part back in whenever television was being made. They see a culture they liked, or stereotype culture they liked. They take that culture, they steal it from those people, and they normalize it to be a European, because a European is now playing that character or role or culture, or representing that culture or music genre more than the original inhabitants. So yeah, Europeans used like TV and like television and radios to steal culture and music genre. After they steal culture or like steal that music genre, they then portray a European person to represent for that certain stereotype or certain culture on television. The European American or European immigrant represents that culture from stolen culture, rather than the original inhabitants being the originals of that culture that was being stolen by the Europeans and then after being broadcasted. Yeah, that's how stolen culture is created. That's how pop culture is created, is by stolen culture. They broadcast that culture to be a European image, or they broadcast that music genre to be a European image. And then through the years, we really think that that's their culture, who steal the cultures of the original inhabitant people who created that culture. Also, since they were in charge of like the television, they were able to depict and make everyone think that that's how a certain ethnicity was or is. Like colored people, they kind of used us in a bad stereotype. After stealing our cultures, they televise us to be a bad stereotype that some of us are not compatible with. Some of us actually fall into those stereotypes through the years, and we actually normalize that to be our culture, which it is now. Our culture is also stolen by the Europeans, who have normalized it to be their culture. Like surfing too, like surfing. Like surfing originated in Polynesia. It originated in Hawaii. Whenever surfing is broadcasted, like in like music and like pop culture and like trendiness, who's representing for it? A European person, a white conflicting person, a white person. Like they steal cultures and then they normalize that culture to be theirs on television or on the radio, through music, through pop culture, and like newspapers and like magazines. They normalize stolen culture to be their culture. And then whenever they stereotype us in like movies or like music, we already know it's very low vibrational, and sometimes it's hatred culture. Like stereotypes, the stereotypes are very low. It's being televised that what a European American is or a white person is, it's more positive than any other colored person. That's why modern day we a lot of us suffer from a lot of ancestral trauma. So our ancestral trauma and modern day trauma and trauma within ourselves, it creates culture to the point where we are kind of sometimes really negative. And some people like the stereotypes, but me, I don't like it. I'm anti stereotypes that the Europeans have created or placed upon us. I'm anti that. You may not be anti that. Some people may not be anti that. But me, I'm anti that. I don't like that. I don't like the stereotypes that they have placed upon us on movies or the stereotypes that we have to be. I don't know. I don't like it. Yeah, that's how stolen culture is created, from stolen culture by the Europeans who were in charge of the television broadcasting, whatever it's called. But movies and shows, they pretty much got all the stereotypes that were stolen culture. So for whenever a brown person is on TV, it's not really a good stereotype, or it's a stereotype that's sometimes either irrelevant or a stereotype that's like not really like us. Not all of us are like that certain person that they systemically see us on the TV, but I mean, yeah, reclaim your native indigenous roots.